deceptive, manipulative.
He's also a former social worker and a political campaign activist.
Some people in town say the base is run by aliens working with our federal government to conduct mind control and genetic experiments.
I'm leaving. I'm glad. Thanks a lot, society, for railroading my ass.
Hey everyone out there, welcome to the Eerie Americas. I'm your host, Kristi Hull.
This is Vicky Ayala.
We've made it. OMG, dude.
This was it was a short week technically because
it was Memorial Day weekend.
It was Memorial Day, even though you guys are going to hear this in a couple of weeks. It was Memorial Day this week, and it was a short work week, but it felt long. It felt so long.
So long. And it didn't feel long for the reasons you would think, like, oh, you had a day off and it was long. It was just like, no, like...
every day dragged.
Time ceased to move. It was just really strange.
It's like the day we had off and didn't have to go to work, that day went super quick. But then Tuesday hit and it just dragged ass the rest of the week. It was horrible. But like this day would never come. It's taken forever to get here.
But it's summer now. We're super stoked. Like, I know you guys are listening. It's officially summer now. But, like, we'll tell you about our weekend anyway. Our friend asked us to be bridesmaids, which was super cool. She also hosted the barbecue. It was sweet.
It was so sweet. And it was, like, a day where I was, like, crazed and running around. And normally, my friends don't bother me to go anywhere. If I say I'm not going, it's just like, all right, we'll see you next time. And, like, for some reason, I should have caught on to the fact that she kept asking me to come. And I'm like, oh, why do you want me to come so bad? And then I walk in and she just hands me this. And I was like, and I didn't even know how to react. I looked at it and I'm like, you're so cute. Like, that was my reaction. I didn't even say yes. I said, you're so cute.
So she asked a couple of us, and Vicky and I had the most normal reactions out of everybody. I guess because we're not mushy, gushy girls. No. Go figure.
Which is funny because she wrote that in my card. Like, she wrote us a card, and the very first line of my card is like, I'm not gonna get mushy.
Yeah, she put the same thing in mine. I was like, yeah, good call. Like, we're not those kinds of girls, but we were the ones who were like, that's so sweet, thank you, of course. You know, yes. One of her other bridesmaids smacked her. Like, literally
she punched her in the stomach.
She punched her from, you know, when you're like excited and joyful, of course.
Really just looked at her, she was like, no! And she like punched her in the stomach.
And then our other friend, who is another mutual friend, she was being super awkward, opening it, of course, because she's awkward in general most of the time, but beyond that, she didn't want her to be filming it, and so she kept being all super self-conscious. Like, she kept looking up and was like, what are you doing? Like, she didn't catch on to what was happening quite yet. I don't think that, or she did and just didn't want to record it. I can't tell. But she was being super awkward, and so it was really funny. I think we were the ones that had the most normal reaction out of everybody.
And I was like, this is why you wanted me to come.
Yeah.
It was awesome.
It was really cool.
It's exciting, and it's going to be fun.
Yeah.
Of course, the first thing we did was plan the bachelorette party in our head.
Montreal, we are coming for you.
Yes. I can't wait because we have been talking about Canada since like the second episode.
I love Canada, even though I've never been there.
Exactly. So it's our first time. Well, not everybody's first, but my first time, Kristi's first time. I am so excited to see it.
And all of our men will be really excited to have their bachelor party there because it's all nude there. So they're going to have a blast too. So
exactly. I am so super excited and so happy for Amanda and so happy that she chose us to be like a part of it. It's really awesome.
I can't wait to see. Well, I can't wait to see her as Mandy eating a Montreal bagel. It's going to be awesome.
Yes, our friend Amanda has different personalities when she's drunk, and when she is really drunk, she's Mandy, and it is the funniest shit on the fucking planet.
We all have our alter egos.
We do, but hers is so funny.
Yeah, I love hers.
It's so funny. And
hers was tame at Memorial Day, given the circumstances. Like, she could have been worse, but...
She could have been... I think she was, like, nervous at first about the proposals, but then after that, she was like, all right, you're the last one. I'm going to get drunk now.
Who's going to say no, though? Who says no to being a bridesmaid? Who does that?
Do people really say no to that?
I've never heard of someone
I feel like it's a question that's not really a question.
I feel like people have backed out for reasons.
Right, or been kicked out. But I don't feel like anybody's like, oh, no.
I've never heard of someone being like, nah,
thanks for asking, though.
Yeah, nah, for sure not.
I didn't even think about it.
For real, yeah. But
even though I don't wear dresses, I'll wear one for you. So, in lieu of an email, Kristi is going to read something creepy, probably.
Yeah, it's not so creepy as it is weird. And so I found it interesting. I wanted to kind of mix it up because we always find like hauntings and stuff like that. But this one piqued my interest enough where I was like, I want to share it. So I did find it on Reddit. It's from R. Bradbury 1920. And the headline says, Post-it notes left in the apartment. So I found it intriguing enough where I wanted to share it. It's short but sweet, so I wanted to get some insight into it. On the 15th of April, I found a yellow post-it note in a handwriting that wasn't mine on my desk, reminding me of some errands I had to do, but told literally nobody about. While odd, I chalked it up to something I did in my sleep, thinking maybe in my half-awake state. I scrawled it so it didn't appear to be my handwriting. I threw it out and thought little of it. On the 19th, I found another post-it note on the back of my desk chair in the same handwriting as the previous note, telling me to make sure I, quote, saved my documents.
What?
I was freaked out, but there were no other signs of a break-in, so I set up a webcam in my house aimed at my desk and used the security cam app for it to record after detecting movement. On the 28th, I woke up to find another post-it note, this one saying, "Our landlord isn't letting me talk to you, but it's important we do."
What?
I immediately checked the webcam folder on my computer and found nothing from the night before, but my computer's recycling bin had been emptied, which I am certain I did not do recently, indicating someone had noticed the webcam and deleted the files. They were just saved straight to a folder on my desktop called webcam. Today, on the 1st of May, I found another post-it note, this time on the outside of my door, with nothing written on it, and there also appeared to be post-its on many other doors in my apartment complex, all blank in varying colors. Do I have any legal recourse here? I have no proof except for the post-its, but those are written by my pen and on my post-it notes, so conceivably I could have faked them. Would contacting the police get me into any trouble if they can't determine an outside source for this? I just want to make sure I'm not wasting anyone's time. So that's the Reddit story. I found that super creepy in a weird way.
So weird.
Yeah.
So he doesn't even know if he did it or not. So it's like, what if you call the cops and they do this investigation and they're like, dude, you totally did this yourself?
Or what if someone really is sneaking into his apartment and doing this odd shit?
I mean, listen, we've gotten some weird stuff on here. We have people that have gone into apartments and pet dogs and washed dishes. So maybe someone did go into your apartment and write you nice post-it notes to remind you of your errands. You don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know why they're blank at the end on everybody's door.
My thing is, why would the landlord not want you to talk to him? Like, what does that even mean? I don't understand.
And they were spaced apart like weird. Like one was like 2 days later, then one was 4 days later, and then one was a bunch of days later. It's like, are you drinking? Are you drinking and then falling asleep? Are you doing any type of drugs?
Personality?
I mean, do you have like a crazy like girl you were talking to that you don't know has the key to your apartment? Like,
that's true. That's a good point too. I don't know. Pretty crazy.
That's pretty weird.
But yeah,
interesting.
So I thought it was interesting enough too.
And like I love post-its and I put like post-it notes everywhere.
Well,
so that would be
post-its for me have a mixed message. When I was growing up, my mom used them as like passive aggressive note, like to like put around, like make sure you dry the dishes and put them away. And she would like
passive aggressive post-it notes.
Yeah. So sometimes I get aggravated when I see the little canary yellow ones. I prefer to use the pink ones because she always used the yellow ones. I don't know why.
Give you a hatred about yellow post-it notes.
But like, I'm not a big fan of yellow in general.
I'm not a big fan of yellow, and I'm pretty sure the post-it notes didn't help.
And Coldplay sucks, and that song sucks. So
I know, I can't do it. Sorry guys, if you love Coldplay, but like, no.
You shouldn't love Coldplay.
You should not.
Coldplay doesn't love Coldplay.
Right? They're like Nickelback. They don't even like themselves.
Oh yeah, no. Nickelback's really low. Maybe Black Eyed Peas.
Yeah, Black Eyed Peas is a good one. They don't like themselves. Today I actually am going to jump into my case. It's something that I've always thought about, and I finally found enough stuff where I could make an episode out of it. It's something I've always found intriguing because I myself, when I was younger, not so much now, I guess, because when you're older, like I said in that reincarnation episode, so many things fog your memory and fog your thinking. But when I was younger, I remember having dreams and always like kind of getting freaked out because they would either kind of come true or I felt like I was prophesizing something. Like I would see something and I would call someone and be like, don't drive today, there's going to be an accident. And then there would be like an accident on the highway. So like I always had those type of dreams. And so I decided to research prophetic dreams and just prophecies in general, people who predicted things. But I started noticing a trend during my research where there have been quite a few people to predict their own death. Whether they actually predicted the age, the date, the way they were going to die, they somehow predicted something about their death.
Very interesting.
So, basically a prophecy, just to clear it up because there are different things. A prophecy is when someone states something unlikely that will happen and then it ends up happening. But it has to have like no connection to the original prediction. So like predicting weather is not a prophecy because you're using technology and other things to figure it out. So it is all relevant. Or like if I threaten to kill you and then I kill you, that's obviously like it's all connected. So it's not a prophecy. But there's certain criteria for prophecies. One, it's kind of got to be clear. It's not like something too broad, too general. It's like saying, I'm going to die at this age, at this time, or doing this, like something like that. It has to be a little bit clear, and it can't be so broad that it could happen at any time. So I can't just be like, hey, I'm going to die, because obviously I am. But if I were to say I'm going to die in 2 weeks and then I did, that's a prophecy. So there are some criteria that go into it. And they shouldn't be confused with like curses, because with curses, there is something that's happening and some outside influences making it happen.
Right.
It's a mysterious thing, but a prophecy is just stating a future event that will happen. A curse it's something that is going to be caused by a mysterious means. So it's really not to be confused with that, or like an omen, or just a word that we hate, coincidence. Because omens are events that are believed to foretell some sort of ill luck, and prophecies aren't always bad. You can prophesy something positive, and an omen is normally a bad thing. With omens, it's always some sort of ill luck with no specific details about those future events. And coincidences, as we have expressed before, are just events that are seemingly connected when they shouldn't be connected, but they don't give foreknowledge like prophecies do. But in this case, with this episode, what if this prophecy is your own death? And what kind of things can foretell something like that? So that's what I'm going to discuss here about people who have prophesied either their own death or the death of a loved one. And although all of them are not dreams, quite a few of these are dreams. And there's been a lot of research with dreams about how connected they are to reality. And maybe some people just use more of their brain and are able to do it. But that's the first one that we're going to jump into. Mark Twain actually prophesies not only his little brother's death, but also kind of his own.
Very interesting. Okay.
So in 1858, Samuel Clemens, who we know as Mark Twain, was 23 years old, and he was working as a steersman on a steamboat called the Pennsylvania. And he had recently arranged for his younger brother Henry, who was just 20 years old, to work on the same ship. And it was a pretty good time for them. They enjoyed being around each other. He enjoyed having his brother work with him. One night, the ship was docked in St. Louis, Missouri, and Mark Twain spent the night at his older sister Pamela's house in town. And he had a really, really vivid dream. In the dream, he was standing in the sitting room of his sister's house. Across two chairs, a metallic coffin was supported. So these two chairs are holding up a metallic coffin, which you don't see a lot, so it's very important that it was metallic. And in the metallic coffin lay his little brother Henry, with a bouquet of white flowers with a single crimson bloom in the center on his chest. Mark Twain awoke the next morning convinced that the dream was real. So he goes so convinced that he got up, got dressed, went downstairs, and went to go see if his brother's corpse was there. That is how real the dream was. He really thought he was going to walk downstairs and see his brother in a coffin. But instead, he didn't see it, so he decided to go for a walk. He was halfway up the block when he realized, wow, I had just dreamed that. Like, that wasn't real. My brother's not there. It took him a while to really figure out that this wasn't real. After doing this, he kind of ran back to his sister's house, and he was just really, really relieved that it was a dream. He told his sister about the dream, and, as with most things, talking about it made him feel better, and he kind of let it go.
And it's interesting he had such a vivid dream that he would remember it that lucidly. I feel like I have really crazy dreams, and then I wake up out of that dream state and can't recall anything.
It's been happening to me for the past 2 weeks, where I've had I know the dreams are crazy because I'm waking up with a certain reaction. Cannot remember the details of the dream for the life of me.
So it's got to be something that is truly terrifying, or something that is so real that it's almost like showing him the future, because you can't.
To remember every detail, something like that, that would make me think it was real also. Because in a dream, you normally know you're dreaming. The creepiest dreams are the ones where you don't know you're dreaming. That has to be terrifying, especially involving something like this.
Absolutely.
But, he finally calms down after talking to his sister. And then they're supposed to set sail to New Orleans. And he basically just stops worrying about the dream. So the ship makes it to New Orleans safely. However, Mark Twain actually had an argument with someone on the ship, and it kind of resulted in a fight. Now, the guy whose last name was Brown, I don't know if I know his first name, but they just call him Brown in the research. Mm-hmm. He actually had been a problem in the past, and so the captain decided that when they're headed back to St. Louis from New Orleans, when they get there, they're going to let Brown go. But to try and prevent any further trouble, Mark Twain volunteered, instead of staying on the ship with Brown, he volunteered to follow on a different ship for the journey back to St. Louis until they can let this guy go.
Got it.
And this kind of is where everything starts to go down. So he basically resumes his job as a steerman, but on the other ship.
Right.
The Pennsylvania sails without Mark Twain, with his brother without Mark Twain, and then Mark Twain follows behind it in another ship called the A.T. Lacey, and it's about 2 days behind, because at this time, that's kind of the way it went.
The way it was.
And while this is happening, again, the Pennsylvania is 2 days ahead of them. The Pennsylvania's boilers exploded just as they're passing Memphis, Tennessee, and it sinks to ships and kills 250 people out of the estimated 500 passengers and crew outright. Meaning, like, the blast happens and right away 250 people die. And then later on, more people die of their injuries.
Wow.
Henry, his brother, had been blown into the river by the initial blast, but he ended up swimming back to the ship to help others escape. So they're not sure as a result of what. It could either be as a result of either the initial blast or when he tried to return, but he had been scalded and yet inhaled steam. And it ended up scalding his lungs, of course, because you're inhaling steam. Mark Twain finally gets there. He goes by Henry's side as soon as he possibly can, but nothing can be done to save him. And even though he held on for a few days, he ended up dying in his sleep. Of course, Mark Twain's absolutely devastated at the grief of his death and also exhausted from taking care of him for those last few days.
And what are the sheer chances that he would get off that boat?
And that would happen. Everything was fine on the way there. It was fine on the way to New Orleans. It was fine everywhere except for this time where he decides. But like you hear stories about this all the time because I've heard about people on 9/11 where they were going to work and then something made them get on the train late when they were never late.
That's
and then like
aunt.
they missed
That's
it.
Happened with my aunt.
It happens. It's like, and you don't know. It's like something crazy happens when you decide to do something differently in your day. Was it like an act of whatever? We don't know. But he didn't get on the ship and then this happened. So, of course, he's devastated, and being so exhausted from tending to him, he basically finds somewhere to stay, like someone in Memphis had given, like a nice citizen gave him a bed, and he basically just collapses for the next few hours, of course, exhausted. When he woke up, he got dressed, went to go, see where his brother was lying. As he walks in, the coffin was supported by 2 chairs. And even though all of the other victims had wood coffins, a special fund had been raised for Henry in light of his youth and bravery, so he lay in, you guessed it, a metallic coffin. As Mark Twain stood looking at his younger brother's corpse, an elderly lady entered the room and placed a bouquet of flowers on his chest. It was all white except for one crimson blood in the center. Super creepy. Mm-hmm. And it's just kind of insane.
Yeah.
And this just goes to show you, like, this was a very detailed prophecy, and it all came true.
And I find it really interesting that it would be Mark Twain because he was a pretty notorious genius, and I always find that people with a higher IQ always have these kind of abilities to kind of
use their brain differently.
They are able to access the world in a way that the average person cannot. Mm-hmm. And I think Mark Twain was one of those people as well.
Right, because they always say that we don't use our brains to the full potential. And it's just what it is. Like, some of us, they say that people don't use their brain to the full capacity, but what if there are people who just use their brain a little bit more and it unlocks something? Because there's something about Mark Twain, because this isn't the only time this happens. Mark Twain was born around the time that Halley's Comet came, because it comes like every, 70 years? So he was born around the time that Halley's Comet was in the sky. And always, for some reason, the research said that he was just fixated and had like this specific relationship with Halley's Comet. I don't know if it's Halley or Haley.
Haley.
It's Halley's Comet. Mm-hmm. So he just always said that he was born with it and he was going to go out with it. And 67 years after Halley's Comet was in the sky, she appears again, and a day later, he dies in his home of a heart attack. He always said it. He always said that he was going to go out the way he came in. And is it a coincidence? Maybe, but I find that really crazy that he would prophesy something like his brother's death. I mean, it's really obscure to say that I'm going to die when Halley's Comet appears again.
Well, we're all made of stars. Maybe Mark Twain was made of comets.
Yeah, maybe. And he just knew it because he really did. He had like a specific relationship with that. So I do fully believe that Mark Twain probably just unlocked a part of his brain that none of us did. And another person who was pretty notorious for being a little bit ahead of their time was Abraham Lincoln.
Controversially, yes.
Yes. He had a friend named Ward Hill Lamon, who was his friend and bodyguard. The two men had met in 1852, and Lamon was instrumental in helping Lincoln later secure the Republican nomination for President of the United States. So after the election, Lincoln appoints him as the U.S. Marshal of the District of Columbia, which is a position that Lamon held until 1865, when he resigned from the position after Lincoln died. Now, after Lincoln's death, Lamon wrote a couple of books on Lincoln. And according to one of the books, One day when Lincoln's wife Mary noticed that Abraham was in a gloomy mood, he described a disturbing dream he had had 10 days earlier that was still troubling him. And LaFlamme was present, as well as another person, and LaFlamme is stating in his own words as I can from notes which I made immediately after his recital. And so here is a quote from LaFlamme describing Lincoln's dream because he wrote it down right after he heard it. I retired very late. I had been up waiting for important dispatches from the front. I could not have been long in bed when I fell into a slumber, for I was wearied. I soon began to dream. There seemed to be a death-like stillness about me. Then I heard subdued sobs, as if a number of people were weeping. I thought I left my bed and wandered downstairs. There the silence was broken by the same pitiful sobbing, but the mourners were invisible. I went from room to room. No living person was in sight, but the same mournful sounds of distress met me as I passed along. It was light in all the rooms. Every object was familiar to me, but where were all the people who were grieving as if their hearts would break? I was puzzled and alarmed. What could be the meaning of all of this? Determined to find the cause of this state of things so mysterious and so shocking, I kept on until I arrived at the East Room, which I entered. There, I met with a sickening surprise. Before me was a catafalque, I don't know if that's how I was saying it right, but it's a framework for displaying a coffin, on which rested a corpse wrapped in funeral vestments. Around it were stationed soldiers who were acting as guards, and there was a throng of people, some gazing mournfully upon the corpse, whose face was covered, others weeping pitifully. Who is dead in the White House? I demanded of one of the soldiers. The president, was his answer. He was killed by an assassin. Then came a loud burst of grief from the crowd, which awoke me from my dream. I slept no more that night, and although it was only a dream, I have been strangely annoyed by it ever since. As if the dream wasn't disturbing enough, it was followed by an odd set of coincidences that only deepened the effect of the vision for him. After the dream, the first time he flipped open a Bible, it fell to the 28th chapter of the book of Genesis, which talked of a wondrous dream experienced by a man named Jacob. So now Abraham Lincoln's curious. He starts flipping through the Bible, and almost every single page he happened to open to was a reference to supernatural visitations, dreams, visions, etc. The strange circumstances more than anything seems to have convinced Abraham Lincoln that his disturbing dream was actually a divine message that was being sent to him. And as we all know, Abraham Lincoln was killed by an assassin. John Wilkes Booth killed him in a theater.
While he was president.
While he was president. So, what was it? Coincidence? I mean, I feel like predicting his death would be one thing, but the fact that it was specifically an assassin and it specifically happened while he was still president makes this a little bit more than a coincidence and makes it more of a prophecy.
I agree.
Again, someone who dreamed something happened. Maybe he unlocked something in his brain. Who knows? But I feel like that was oddly specific. We're going to get into one more dream of predicting your own death before I not lighten it up, but at least uncreepify it a little bit by going to something else besides the dream. And this one is one that I definitely didn't know, and it was very interesting to me, and it was Sharon Tate. So we all know that Sharon Tate was a victim of the famous Manson murders. If you don't know, you're either too young or living under a rock.
Or let us know and we'll do an episode on it.
Right. If you really want to hear about it, I'll do a quick little summary.
I happily keep my helter-skelter invisible at all times, so I'm very familiar with the case.
I stole it, so it's at my house. But I have it. But it's there.
It's right somewhere.
It's actually on top of my coffee table, so anytime somebody walks in, the first thing they see in my living room is that on my coffee table. It's like a centerpiece. But if you don't know who she is, quickly, without getting into too much detail, she was an American actress and model, and during the 1960s, she played few small roles in television and film, and she was then married to famous director Roman Polanski. In 1969, 2 weeks away from giving birth, she, along with, I believe, 2 friends, were murdered by members of the Manson family. So while this came as a shock to everyone, and I think it still does, it seems as she had actually predicted her death in a dream. So there was a magazine called Fate magazine. I'm not really familiar with it, but I did look it up a little bit, and it seems to be one of those magazines that it wasn't taken too seriously because it was basically known for like paranormal phenomena, like alternative medicine, mental telepathy, things like that.
So basically things we talk about on this show.
Right. That at that time, and sometimes still now, are taboo.
It is taboo.
It is taboo. So in a May 1970 issue of Fate magazine, Dick Kleiner published an article describing how Sharon Tate had a disturbing waking dream a couple of years before the gruesome events of August 9th, 1969. The article was published in May 1970, but she had actually predicted it This happened 2 years before the murders. So the article was called Sharon Tate's Preview of Murder, and it goes into great detail about the vision, which is actually kind of like two visions in one. So in the summer of 1967, Sharon was this is before she marries Roman Polanski. She's actually romantically involved with a Hollywood hairstylist, Jay Sebring, who actually ends up being one of the other victims of the Manson murders, which is weird already. So Sharon was spending a night in his home because he was away. And the home that he lived in was previously owned by a man named Paul Byrne, who was a Hollywood agent who had committed suicide in the home in 1932, which was like a known fact within like their Hollywood circle. So already you have a couple of weird things going on, an eventual victim in a home that someone committed suicide in. So that night she had a funny feeling that kept her from sleeping, and she was constantly being startled by all these small noises that kept happening around the home. When she turned on the light in the bedroom, she saw a small man, and he was just kind of like walking aimlessly around the room with like no purpose. He was just kind of like fumbling around the room. And the man, she said in the article, looked exactly like every description she had ever heard of Paul Byrne, who was the man who committed suicide 30 years before.
Right.
So already this is quite a vision. This is the first part of the vision. Although the actual man himself, or the figure that was standing there, wasn't particularly threatening to her, she was still, of course, terrified at his presence. So she kind of runs out of the room, runs downstairs, only to basically be overcome with like another horrible thing. Quote, "I saw something or someone tied to the staircase, whoever it was, and I couldn't tell if it was a man or a woman, but I somehow knew that it was either Jay Sebring or me, and he was cut open at the throat," which we've seen the crime scene photos. If you haven't, it's Googleable, because after the murders, Roman Polanski controversially released the crime scene photos. So you can, and I actually went to the Museum of Death in New Orleans when I was there last year, and you can look up they're crazy, and she was cut at the throat. Right now, she's even more terrified, and so she leaves the room, and like any normal human being, or at least myself, and I'm sure Kristi would do the same thing, she goes looking for a drink to calm herself down.
Yeah. I would feel like having a drink right now.
Yes. So she didn't actually know where Jay kept the liquor, but she said, again, something kept like leading her towards things, and something led her, not like an actual voice, but just a feeling, led her to open a shelf on a bookcase. Inside, she found a button revealing a liquor, like one of those hidden, it's maybe one of those things you have when you have too much money, a hidden liquor cabinet.
Hidden liquor cabinet, a book. Yeah.
So she has a drink, pinches herself, which I totally would do, feels nothing, to see if she was dreaming. Then she said this feeling again told her to rip off some of the wallpaper at the bottom of the liquor cabinet. So she does it, feels kind of silly, pinches herself again, feels nothing. And then she's like, she takes the drink, she returns to bed, somehow falls asleep. She said on her way back upstairs, she walked past this vision of whoever was cut at the throat. She walked by it again. So it's not like a normal thing where like you might see it and then like it disappears. It was still there on her way back upstairs. And she also saw Paul Byrne again, like the small man. But she still somehow manages to fall, quote unquote, fall asleep. The next morning, when, Jay Sebring comes back, she tells him of the dream. The two kind of giggle it off, say it was just like a really weird dream. And they actually go into the room with the liquor cabinet. The cabinet was open, and there were scraps of wallpaper all over the floor. She didn't do that. Like, she had only peeled off a little bit, but they found this liquor cabinet open with wallpaper all over the floor. Again, she had a dream about it. So now this is kind of like, was this a dream? Was this not a dream? She was convinced this was a dream, but there was like evidence that it really happened. So was it a dream, or did it really happen in real life? She, according to the article, chalks it up as a dream this whole time. But then 2 years later, they both wound up dead in the Manson murders.
Wow.
Dream,
wow.
Not a dream, creepy, very.
Very much so.
Very much so. And that was, again, oddly specific. And that's what makes it a prophecy. And so while those are pretty detailed, I did find a few that weren't as detailed, but they're still kind of equally a little disturbing. So there's one that I found of a man named Frank Pastore. He was a baseball player. He played for the Cincinnati Reds and the Minnesota Twins in the 70s. And in the 80s, he actually went on to host a national Christian show that he called the Frank Pastore Show. And he actually made a really public comment about his death. So in the November 19, 2012 episode, Pastore was speaking about like motorcycles and like the mortality rate. And he goes, "You guys know I ride a motorcycle, right?" Asking his viewers. At any moment, especially with the idiot people who cross the diamond lane into my lane without any blinkers, not that I'm angry about it, at any minute, I could be spread all over the 210. So a month later, he's on the 210 freeway, hours after a broadcast that he had done, when a 56-year-old woman drifted into his lane, collided with him. He goes into a major coma and dies.
Whoa.
Not the only time something like this happens. I mean, sometimes it's just a statement. It's just a feeling. It's not always a dream.
Or do you throw it out there? And that's
right,
my thing.
Right.
Do you summon this? And that's another thing that we haven't considered. Did Sharon Tate dream this up and then summon the Mansons
and
over?
Somehow something.
Or is this something that everyone felt was going to happen? Is this a premonition? And that's the big thing. Is it the summoning that you do, or is it a premonition?
Right. And that's not the only time something like this happens. There's another one that I found of a basketball player. His name was Pistol Pete Maravich. He was once voted one of the 50 greatest NBA players of all time. And he, during an interview, kind of said something kind of bizarre. He was 26 during the time of his interview, and he said something along the lines of, he didn't simply want to play for 10 years in the NBA and then suddenly die of a heart attack at the age of 40. He wound up retiring 6 years after that interview due to an injury, lasting exactly 10 years in the NBA, and then eventually collapsed from a heart attack at the age of 40 during a pickup game. So, it's one thing for something to be a coincidence or for you to predict something, but, that was, again, oddly specific. You said you were going to last 10 years in the... it's just something you're like, oh, whatever, I'm going to do, maybe I'll die of a heart attack at 32, and then you die of a heart attack at 32. It's a little too specific for you to, have known that. Did he summon it? Did he have a dream? It was just a feeling that overcame him one day, and then it just happened?
No
And
clue.
you'll notice this happens over and over again. And another one that I know Kristi and I definitely know is Tupac.
Yep.
We all know he's in history, one of the greatest rappers of all time.
He may be in Cuba.
I would love it if he was in Cuba. Tell me what it's like. Tupac was also known for being very intelligent, and he was very understanding of society and culture. A lot of the things he said, they're still relevant now. And one of the things, if anybody watches any of his old interviews, is he always spoke about not making it to an old age. He always spoke about it. And there was one interview where, the interview asked him one of those questions, where do you see yourself in 15 years? And he basically said the best case scenario was he was either going to be in a cemetery or cremated. But that's a morbid answer, and everybody kind of looks at you like, what? So he kind of quickly changed it. It was like, well, I'd rather be a multimillionaire than dead. But it wasn't the only time he would say something like this. There was another interview where he basically expressed that he knew he was going to die at a young age. According to Oxygen in 1995, Tupac told Vibe magazine that he was giving them his final interview, expressing a desire to have his story told accurately before he died. Then in 1996, he filmed a music video. Everybody should go watch it. I Ain't Mad at Ya, which depicted him in the afterlife communicating with his loved ones. And just a few weeks later, he was murdered in a drive-by shooting in Las Vegas, and he was only 25. So maybe he didn't know the specific details, but something kept telling him that he wasn't going to make it past 25. He knew it. He knew it. And we could all sit there and be like, oh, I don't think I'm going to make it that long. It's also different to state it in every interview and start giving your final interviews right before you die.
Yeah, and I've heard the argument before, well, he was a gangster, he's already been in jail, he had enemies. Granted, all of that. But how would he know that would be his final interview? How did he know that would be his final
And how did he
hit?
know he was going to be so young? You can make it to 40 and still, 40 is still young, but he knew he wasn't making it to that age.
You could still have enemies for years and years.
In his 20s, he knew he wasn't making it further than 15 years. He already knew that. So it's
pretty incredible.
But I have another one that I found that kind of chilled me to my core. And Weezer is a band that I listened to a lot when I was younger, and their former bassist Mikey Wells, she posted something really weird and very specific to his Twitter account, so it was recent, 2 weeks before he died. Quote, dreamt I died in Chicago last weekend, heart attack in my sleep, need to write my will today, end quote. He then went back and added, correction, the weekend after next. According to Billboard, the 40-year-old was found unresponsive in his Chicago hotel room 2 weeks later, exactly as he predicted.
What did he die of?
So the cause of death has never been released. I don't know if it was trying to be kept quiet. Authorities at the time thought maybe it was a combination of prescription drugs and heroin. They never released it. So we don't know. It's probably drug-related. But if that's true and it was drug-related, then I guess maybe people would find the Twitter prediction less strange because it could have been intentional. But while predicting your suicide is kind of like its own level of tragic, it's not necessarily like prophetic, but not everyone believes that it was intentional though.
Mm-hmm.
There was a statement released saying from the rest of the band saying, "We know damn well he would never have wanted to stop The Rock at today's Riot Fest, the show he was planning on attending. On the contrary, The Rock was what he loved, both in music and art." So, and I also feel like if it was intentional, I don't know that how many people would write something like that on Twitter 2 weeks before. Maybe something depressing, maybe something a little bit morbid, but to be like, dude, I dreamt this and I'm gonna have to write my will today, it doesn't seem intentional to me. And granted, I've had a family member who committed suicide, and I, as someone who has been through it with a family member, I wasn't shocked when my family member committed suicide. And I know people always want to be shocked, but if you really sit there and you think about it, there's usually some sort of sign. And I feel like his band members would have been the right ones to say whether or not they had seen anything beforehand. Mm-hmm. And the fact that they're like, there's no way he would have missed this. I don't know. It just seems too specific to die.
Yeah.
That 2 weeks later in the hotel room, it seems weird.
And in a city you're not from.
Right. It's weird. So my last one I'm going to go into is D12, just because I loved D12. So he's a rapper, and he was in a nightclub in his hometown and he was shot and killed during an argument. Now, 2 years before that, in 2004, on the album D12 World, he rapped, "I'm in the club to beef, you gotta murder me there," which is like kind of specific.
Yeah.
Considering that he was murdered like that.
Over beef in a club.
Right. So the circumstances behind his death was like a little bit weirder, because in 2005, he was in Eminem's music video for Like Toy Soldiers, which is about the murder of another D12 member. And he plays the deceased rapper, and he reenacts his murder for the music video. So, like, acting it out and then his own death years later, like, it makes it a little bit more creepy. Now, not to make anything seem, like, less eerie than it is, he was, like, he was in clubs a lot, and a lot of people were like, oh, well, he was always in the club. But murder is, like, not a common cause of death. As much as we have so many podcasts and so many things dedicated to murders, it's actually not a common cause of death. And in the U.S., it's around 6 for every 100,000 people. So whether or not it was likely that maybe he would have been in a club, like, to predict a murder in a club is still highly unlikely, even if you go to the club every day.
And not just that, most clubs have security, so you know what I mean. Like,
and he's like a rapper, checked. And he was pretty famous. You get checked, and like one of his friends told Guardian that he wasn't the sort of guy that would like initiate a fight either. So for you to have like for you to be like, well, he went to the club every day and he was that type of guy, he wasn't. So it is super creepy that he specifically said something like that and then it happened. These stories, I mean, there's a lot of questions that could be raised with them. Like we said, are they prophetic? Are they coincidence? Or is it something you're summoning? Are you unlocking some secret part of your brain? Did something tell you this? But like, I don't know. It just seems like kind of not a common occurrence, but kind of something that weirdly happens to people. And I don't know why it doesn't happen to more people. Why those people specifically? Why a lot of times is it in a dream? Like, that's something we could probably dedicate a whole thing to, about people and their interpretation of dreams and the connection that dreams might have to reality. But to me, it just, predicting your own death, it's insane to me.
Question.
Yes.
If you could know the day you were going to die, would you want to know?
No. I don't want to know.
Would you want to know how, like these people?
No, because I think that not the beautiful thing about it, but like I think there's something beautiful in not knowing. I feel like if you knew, it would just make you paranoid and not enjoy life for the rest of the time that you had. So I don't think it really benefits to know. And at least with all of these stories, I feel like people also kind of ignored the signs. Not ignored it, but kind of chalked it up to, oh, I'm not going to pay attention to it.
But what could you really do?
But like, exactly. So like, if I dreamed that I died of a drowning, am I supposed to never go by water again?
Right.
Like, if I'm going to go, then let me just live my life the way, that's kind of how we should live our lives. But yeah, I don't think I'd want to know. I don't want to know when, I don't want to know where, and I don't want to know how. I just feel like it kind of takes away from your life knowing that, because then you live to die.
I agree.
And I don't want to live to die. I want to live and then,
But I also feel like it would be helpful to know a general time frame. I think that would be the only thing for me, is because then I would know how much time I have left. Like,
to enjoy.
Am I Am I paying off my student loans for no reason?
Well, do I really have to pay this bill? Because then if not, like, screw y'all. I'm keeping my rent money and I'm traveling.
Am I going to pay a mortgage for 30 years and then die 15 years into it? You know what I mean? Like, it would be beneficial for life choices.
Right.
But I don't think I'd want to know in general. So I have to go with that. If I'm going to be honest, if I really self-reflect, if not thinking superficially, no, I would not want to know.
But, like, superficially, it's like, can I just use this money for something else instead?
Yeah. If I have 10 years, am I going to spend the next 10 years paying off student loans that got me nowhere?
No, screw you. I'm dying in 10 years anyway. Yeah, that would probably be the only reason I did. It's like, do I do this or do I do that? You know what? I'm just going to do this instead because what are you going to do?
That's a great episode, but let's move on to something a little
lighthearted.
Less eerie. So we're going to go into our lighthearted segment now. Here we go.
Who does that? Who does that? Who does that? Who does that?
Via HuffPost.com, man allegedly gives false name during arrest, despite wearing name tag. Yes.
Oh my god, that's so funny. Because quickly, when I was younger, I remember, and my sister did this too, I had one of those like tacky nameplates. Yeah. And I remember a guy asked me for my name, and I had a nameplate with my name, and I gave my sister's name, and he's like, your nameplate says Victoria.
What a dumbass.
And I gave my sister's name. I was like, oh, shit.
That is so funny. I think that actually happened to a friend of mine. She was wearing like a gold chain. You remember like the early 2000s, everyone had gold with their name on it and like a diamond or two. And she told the guy a fake name and he's like, oh, so you're wearing so-and-so's name tag? And she was like, oh, right. Like, you know.
I like lied and said it was my middle name, but like, I'm pretty sure.
You're not going to lie to the cops about that. You're going to remember that that's on your person.
No, I'm going to tell the cops the truth.
But let me tell you why this is. Let me read this and you'll see why it's even dumber.
Oh, God.
What's in a name tag? Well, for one Nebraska man, it means criminal charges. Lincoln police arrested 26-year-old Markle Towner on Tuesday for allegedly resisting arrest and providing false names to officers, the department wrote on Facebook earlier this week. Police responding to a report of a domestic assault around 10:30 p.m. found the suspect, Towner, sitting in a parked vehicle outside the home. They noted that Towner also had 2 warrants for his arrest. When they questioned Towner, he allegedly gave his name as D'Angelo Towns, according to Omaha station KETV. However, the officers say they noticed a lanyard around Towner's neck that read Markle Towner. When Towner was told he was under arrest, police said he tensed up, resisted arrest, and yelled that he didn't do anything wrong. Towner was taken into custody after a struggle that lasted several minutes, police said. The department's statement also alleged that Towner's friends and family members surrounded the officers and tried to prevent the arrest. Towner is charged with resisting arrest, obstructing a government operation, false reporting, child neglect, and third-degree domestic assault, according to news station KETV. So this guy is hitting his wife, doing God knows what else. He's home, he sits in his car, and doesn't take his name tag off like a fucking dumbass. Like, if you're gonna lie to the cops, if you're gonna be this terrible person, take off any fucking ID that you might have, you stupid asshole. Like, seriously.
But, like, at the same time, also, then, obviously, someone in the home probably called the cops. Do you think that one of them wasn't going to be like, actually, his name is Mark?
But you're sitting outside of your home in your car. You have so many chances to either A, get away, or B, take the damn name tag
I feel
off.
like he, like, sat there, he was like, you know what? I'm going to sit here and I'm just going to give him the wrong name.
I'm so smart. I can talk my way out of this.
Like, I totally got this. I'm just going to tell him my name is this. All right, dude.
Oh, my God. I can't with people sometimes, man. I swear. People really think that they're so clever, but the average person is really stupid. I'm sorry. It's just how it is.
This dude definitely is. And also, who wears lanyard around their neck anymore? That's, like, not 5.
Yeah, I don't know. That's got to be some kind of horrible job. It's got to be. But why keep that on? Again, 10:30 at night, hitting your wife or fighting with somebody, and you're going to keep your freaking name tag on? You're ridiculous, dude. Stay in jail. That's the moral of that story.
Stay in jail.
I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Vicky creeped me out a lot because now I'm thinking about how I'm going to die. So thanks. That's lots of fun.
Sorry, guys. Sorry. But at least if you dream it, look out.
At least you can say you've been warned, right? Subscribe. Please leave us a review.
Email us. Just talk to us. We love talking to you guys.
You know the deal now. And if you don't, most importantly,
stay weird, Americas.
Bye.